Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hardwood Hoops podcast. This is our first emergency podcast. We've had a lot of trades, Ben.
Yes, exciting times. We said it was going to get a bit lively this next week or two, didn't we? And it has not proved us wrong.
No, definitely. As you can tell, that is my usual co-host, Ben. The plan for this pod was to do it later in the week, and we're going to talk about some trades and some free agents. But we had too many trades happen overnight, and we thought, why not kind of link it all together and talk about them now. We are one day out from the draft, Ben, and the NBA's already gone crazy. I think we're 1 hour into the trades being open, and we got our first All-Star trade. So let's start talking about the biggest deals. Let's start with Mr. CP3. Chris Paul being traded to the Suns for a 2022 protected first-round pick. Kelly Oubre, Mr. Ricky Rubio, who Ben loves, Ty Jerome, who Ben doesn't love, and someone called Jalen Leak that I cannot pronounce. This was about 55 minutes after the trade deadline properly started. And I was shocked how quick this was and what a trade it is, mate.
Yeah, big. It's a really big name, really big trade. I'm sure we'll make some comments on it. But what a cracking way to start this trade window here.
Yeah, he was one of the players we spoke about in our last podcast. We named 3 players we both thought would get traded. He was either the first or second name to come out of both our mouths, I think. And within an hour, he's already gone. So the highlights for me for this trade was that the Suns still keep the 10th pick in tomorrow night's draft. It really improves the team, obviously. In terms of salary-wise, not many teams could afford without giving up big players of their team to get Chris Paul in. But because the Suns already had 20-odd million of cap space, it meant they only had to get rid of role players and Ricky Rubio, who I guess Chris Paul basically replaces. And I'll go on later to talk about a quote we've got from a fan, but upgrading to a Hall of Fame point guard from a really good point guard is an upgrade. And I just think that can't be lost, even though they are losing a starter. They're definitely upgrading. What are your thoughts from a Suns perspective first on the trade and what they had to give up to get CP3?
It's a great move for them, and I think it's about right. I mean, OKC are swimming in picks now, aren't they? But for what he brings to that team and what he's going to help Devin Booker do, it's a perfect combination. I'm really up on this trade. I think it's really, really great from the Suns' perspective, and I think it's going to allow them to kick on. We said that they need some veteran presence on that team, but where was it going to come? And it's coming in the form of an all-star point guard, which is fantastic. So, yeah, really, really high on that for the Suns.
Yeah, we were talking about potential starting lineup and Chris Paul, Devin Booker. We both thought that Mikal Bridges would probably play.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other one was Cam Johnson on the wing as well. And then Mr. DeAndre Ayton at 5. So it really does improve their starting lineup. Maybe loses a little bit of depth, which kind of always happens when you make a trade for any All-Star. You always end up giving up more than obviously you get in terms of players/picks. But I still think they've got a mid-level. They can probably get another aging veteran in on a minimum to add another couple of pieces. And like we said, they've still got the 10th pick in the draft. Do you think the Suns need one more star to be a true contender? Whether they get that this year or next year, because Chris Paul's a 2-year deal, so they've got 2 seasons with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton in the team together as a 3. Do they need one more player, whether it's this summer, next summer, or throughout this season? You think?
I personally would say, like you said, maybe they've given up a bit of depth, so maybe hunt through free agency or maybe make a good pick and fill in for a veteran role player, perhaps, just to. Chris Paul's going to be great for the guards and he's going to be great for the bigs working on the pick and rolls and stuff. But for the wings, is he going to offer much sort of guidance and help for them? That's where I'd sort of be targeting now, somebody to help develop that talent there. Let Devin Booker and Chris Paul find their feet in terms of working together, sharing the ball, who's going to get touches where and when. It could make Devin Booker more of an off-ball player, which would be quite interesting to see. Hit some screens and take some shots off there. He could be, could have an incredible shooting season this next season. So I think that's where I'd go with it, and maybe wait and see what you can attract next year. A couple of bigger free agents out there that could be interested in a up and coming Suns team if they really put a marker down this season. So that's the way I would approach it if I was Suns management. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's very good they've got the 2 years with Chris Paul to kind of feel it out a little bit. My instant reaction would be the team they've got now isn't enough to
No.
win a title, to get far enough, but we don't know what role players they're going to add. We don't know if Devin Booker's going to take a leap like I don't think he's as good, but whether he can take a leap, Luka Doncic type leap, where you're one of the top 20, 30 players in the league, really good young player who really performed well in the bubble, for example, and then move up like Luka did last year to being an MVP candidate. If he moves up to being a top 5 to top 10 player, even if it's just for that season, and you've got Chris Paul, who's a top 20, top 25 player as well, they could be better than maybe I think. But I agree with you. I think they need a couple more options off the bench, a little bit more shooting for kind of players that don't want the ball.
Yeah,
But
the
I do
Lakers
like
this
Mikal
year.
Bridges.
Lakers this year have shown that you can win a championship with 2 stars and role players. So I'm not saying they're going to step up and win a championship this season. The West is ridiculously tough, even though players seem to be opting to leave this year and go over to the East.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it improves the team definitely, and they should have a feeling out year. And there's no reason now why they can't be a middling playoff team. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, so if you look at it for next year, they've only got Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Akubu on contracts for next year. I think that totals, well, this is a bit crazy. Booker and Paul together total 75 million.
Yeah.
So that's quite a lot. But if the cap does stay at what we think it will, which we're not sure if it will, but if it does stick, they will have cap space to go at a good, not a max player, I don't think, but a good level player and whatever mid-level they can add this year. So it's definitely exciting times, I would say, to be a Phoenix Suns fan. Before we move on to talk about the OKC side, I did have a quote from Suns fans UK on Twitter. We wanted to get a fan perspective on the trade. And he said, this is a great trade for the Suns. It proves Devin Booker that the team is serious about winning. We lose a budding star in Kelly Oubre, who was going to leave next summer anyway if we didn't offer him a max. We lose a top 20 point guard in Ricky Rubio, but we do that to upgrade to an all-star and all-NBA future Hall of Fame point guard, which I thought was quite a nice line.
Nice.
He also added that his impact will be huge on this team, giving another go-to player alongside Booker. He will also raise the game of DeAndre Ayton with how he can suck defenses in and find the open man and work in the pick and roll, which is something that you mentioned. And then he said, just look at what he did with OKC last season. He's certainly the best player that we've traded for since Charles Barkley in 1992. So It's safe to say the Suns fans are very sad to see Ricky Rubio especially leave, because they've learned to fall in love with him, which most fans do. Everybody loves Rubio, but they've realised that the upgrade is huge. I just think for your Suns fan, you've got to be really positive, which is nice to see. And they didn't have to give up the 10th pick. And I agree with you. I think the 10th pick is where they should be targeting a wing for in this draft.
Yeah, just really bolster their sort of their forwards and their wings. Just really get the depth back there. I mean, they've not got a massive amount of centres really either. Still got Bainesy. Is he gone? Is he still there?
I thought he was a free agent. I'm just looking now. I've just got it open. No, they lost old Bainesy boy. So they got Frank the Tank Kaminsky, who I hate. But he's got a bit of shooting. And then they got Czech Diallo as well as their backup point forward, power forward. So yeah, they need another big.
Okay, yeah,
but I think you can get that in the second round.
Dime a dozen, yeah.
Yeah, they've got the 10th pick, and they have. This is interesting actually. They haven't got a second round pick. So whether or not they want to trade back to acquire another pick, which is a rumor that they were trying to do originally, was to trade that 10th pick. That wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to trade with someone like a Boston Celtics maybe and get a couple more picks.
Yeah, especially what we've been saying is the talent drop off between like 7 to 20 isn't huge.
Yeah, it's probably even more. It's probably more like 8 to 10 all the way back to nearly 30, 40 at times if you listen to some draft experts.
Wow.
So yeah, I could see them trading back or trading out. I asked him as well about the Phoenix Suns guy about the trade thing, and he said that they're not opposed to trading that 10th pick straight up for a veteran now. Someone who's making the 5 to
Makes
15 million range, which wouldn't surprise me either, to be honest. Trevor Ariza would have been a prime candidate, but we'll talk about him later. But yeah, good trade for the Suns. Let's talk about it from a Thunder point of view now. They've got rid of another player. They've turned Russell Westbrook, who they originally traded for, obviously, Chris Paul, into 3 first-round picks, with the ones they got originally and then this new first-round pick. They now own 16 first-round picks in the next 6 years, and I think they own 12 seconds as well, I believe, and a lot of them are pick swaps. They can pick the best pick. Firstly, what a crazy haul that is. But in terms of this trade, if you're from a Thunder fan point of view, you think it's enough? And what do you think about the next 6 years? They could have a crazy squad.
Yeah, I think so. OKC don't, as much as Chris Paul did what he did this year, they don't want his salary sat around, and they don't want this aging star turning sort of sour and wanting to get out of there and fighting for a trade. I think they've been proactive and been positive and got what they want out of it, which is picks. All right, they've got a couple of budding sort of up and coming players back with it, which is promising, which is good. They can develop that talent, and they've got a really, really good point guard in Ricky Rubio, so him and Steven Adams can still run those pick and rolls and sort of keep developing the guards that they have there if they stick them around. I know there's other rumours going that Dennis Schroeder's going, and Danny Green's coming back. So who knows how long those guards will be there to develop. But I do feel a little bit sorry for Ricky Rubio. He's kind of been traded to a dead team, if you will. I'm sure he'll get snapped up by another team that needs a point guard, even a second string point guard, because he is fantastic. His defense is okay. His shooting is streaky, but his ball handling and his passing is just otherworldly sometimes. So he'll get snapped up easily. I know he's on 17 million though, which is a fair bit.
Yeah, well, there's rumours that they want to then. Well, they might want to then trade him. Obviously, there's rumours they want to trade Adams. We'll go on to talk about Schroeder a bit later, but they want to trade Adams, and there's talks that they could trade Rubio again to get more picks, which has just been nuts. It might get to a point where they've got everyone's picks already, so there's no one to trade with. Or you'd think that some GMs would be like, no, I'm just not trading with them anymore. They've just got so many picks.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have to see. There's rumours they might trade them both. So I agree. I think for now, Rubio, well, he tweeted something out. I don't think he's best pleased about the business. I think he said in general that it's not sport, it's a business. But I think he could get moved again. But yeah, so you say it's a fair haul then, really? For
I think so. I think it's really reasonable.
That's leaving in 2 years. They get Kelly Oubre back as well, who's a young asset to pair with Shea Gildress, which is nice.
Yeah. I'd love to see Steven Adams go somewhere else, though.
I think he will.
I don't know what the feeling is, with the general basketball public on Steven Adams, but I am a huge Steven Adams fan, and I think he could be a massive contributor to a team somewhere, rather than being stuck here. And he's still only 27.
Yeah, it's
feels
hard
like
when
he should be like in his 30s, mid-30s.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard when he can't shoot though.
No.
This is everyone would say he is very well paid for a centre, but it's similar to the Drummond stuff from the Pistons, that he's very well paid, but it's an expiring contract. So someone might want to take him on just for 1 year and then see what happens. But
yeah, ready for next year.
But yeah, if not, they'll just let him walk, I think, next season. But if they can get anything for him, I think Sam Presti's shown that he's the GM to try and get it. But yeah, 16 first-round picks in 6 years.
Wow.
Crazy. I'd wonder how many picks of those they actually make, or if they go the Boston route, which I think most people think they would, or the Lakers route where they trade everything for a star. If Thunder get to a point where they can trade 5 first-round picks for one player, 5 first-round picks for another, and they get a couple of all-stars, down the line that have already got contracts rather than waiting for free agency, or whether they try and make as many top picks as they can. Like, just say every year we're going to trade however many picks so we can get into the top three, and we're going to pick a top three player for every year for 4 years and see what team we get. I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's definitely exciting times for a Thunder fan.
Yeah, like it's crazy. They could end up as well, the way they're sort of swapping and chopping and changing the teams, they could end up not performing as well as they have done this year and end up getting, a couple of really high draft picks in a row. And I guess they don't necessarily need to do that themselves now with all these picks.
No, they can rely on other teams to have bad seasons to give them good picks, but you would still think that their pick's going to be, well, to be honest, it's going to be right up there regardless, you'd think.
Yeah, you'd have thought so.
Yeah, I think they've got their own first round pick for the next 3 years, and with the way they're going, trading all their players, you'd think that they're going to be in the top couple of picks for the draft lottery every year, especially the fact they play in the West.
Yeah, definitely. I think they'll get a good haul.
Yeah, they got pick swaps as well. So if the other team's pick was ever worse, they can just pick them instead. I know most of their picks like teams like the Clippers and stuff, but they've got a couple from like a Memphis. They've got their own. They've got Atlanta one. They've got all these ones they've just acquired. So yeah, they've got absolutely loads. So we'll have to see. I have spoken to a Thunder fan as well, just to get his opinion, to see what the other side of the trade were thinking. And his words were, this is from OKC UK. But obviously the first thoughts on CP3 leaving are sad ones. Chris had an outstanding season, both as a player and a role model around the changing rooms. No other fan base can understand how much he meant to us this season, considering it wasn't looking likely after the Russ trade they'd even suit up for us. Now that he's gone, we can only thank him for everything and be happy for whatever the magician Sam Presti got for him. Ricky Rubio is someone who should get flipped for more assets with relative ease. Oubre is a tricky one as he's got 1 year left in his contract, but some say he still has potential. The other two players, he basically says that it's too early to tell, and he's seen videos of them. And one of them, I think Leke might be dubbed Baby Westbrook, which he quite likes. And then he put, well, he OKC fan, so he loves Russell Westbrook. He put, overall, I've got to be happy with it, especially with another pick for our war chest. Just sad to see Chris Paul go, but couldn't wish him any more luck, which is nice. I think it's a rare trade where both sets of fans are quite happy.
Especially with Chris Paul involved.
Very true, very true. So cool. That's the first trade. For every trade I'm going to ask you, Ben, who won the trade?
This is tough.
You could be cute and say Chris Paul won the trade, or you could pick a team. What are you going with?
Chris Paul's definitely won he's massively won there, but I am gonna pick a team, and I'm gonna say the Suns have won this.
If I had to pick a team, I'd agree.
I think the talent and the experience and what they've given up for it, I think they come out absolutely on top there. So great work, Suns.
Yeah, I'd agree. With the protections as well, it would look like that next year be something from a 16th to 20 odd pick. So
yeah,
it's not going to be like a top 3 to 5 pick unless the Suns are really bad, and then they won't see that pick for 3 years anyway. So I would agree that the Suns got it, and I think Chris Paul's going to be very happy as well. Let's move on to the next two trades. I kind of jumped these in together. I've called this Bucks making moves, Ben. The Milwaukee Bucks, a team that me and you kind of like and dislike. We hated them in the playoffs and said they needed to shake things up. Well, they have. Yeah. So they've traded for Drew Holiday and Bogdan Bogdanovic. Let's start with the Drew Holiday trade first, because he's obviously the bigger player. George Hill and Bledsoe going the other way, alongside 3 first-round picks and 2 future pick swaps. So basically, the Pelicans could choose which pick they want, whether they want their own or they want the Bucks. They'll probably choose their own because the Bucks you'd think would be good. But you never know, if Giannis did leave in 3 or 4 years and the Bucks were really bad and they were the worst team, they could take the Bucks pick. So what are your thoughts overall from a Milwaukee Bucks view on this single trade?
I like this as well. They definitely need a shake-up, and Drew Holiday is a great way to shake it up. We all know he's a really good defensive guard. He's a really good ball handler, so he's going to take that pressure off Giannis initially. But he's also quite a good shooter.
Yeah, he is.
And the way this team plays, he should really slot in nicely. Um, I'm looking forward to him being an. I know Milwaukee Bucks still, even with the players they've got, don't really get like the Showtime games and the limelight. But I'm really looking to seeing a bit more of Drew Holiday on another sort of playoff contender, because it's been a while since we've really seen him hit a sort of a peak in his potential. So I'm really interested in this one. George Hill is aging. He's a great vet, and again, a really good ball handler and defender. But apart from that, he doesn't really bring too much more to the table. Bledsoe is just too inconsistent. He's up and down, and just you can't rely on him. So for the Bucks to have that on your roster when you need to rely on somebody to go to like make something as a point guard, especially, it's a really good player to sort of get rid of. But he will be a really good contributor for the Pelicans if they hang on to him. And George Hill will be again that veteran influence in the locker room, because I think he is a really good locker room guy. I think they could be two really good characters to add to that Pelicans roster. So really good result all around there.
Yeah, the Holiday's the same age as Bledsoe as well. So a lot of people say, originally saying it's a lot to trade for anyone who trades for Holiday because of his age. But if you're replacing your point guard who's already 30 with another 30-year-old point guard, you're not losing anything in the age category.
Yeah, and George Hill's 34, so
yeah, and he's your backup who's getting paid $10 million. Their salaries together, basically, as you'd expect for a trade, they match perfectly up to Drew Holiday. So for me, it's a good. I'd say I use the words good trade for the Bucks. I think he improves them. I'm not a big Bledsoe fan. We've had Joe Holbert on the podcast a couple of times now. He quite likes Bledsoe. And he has mentioned on Twitter that if you look at the numbers, last couple of years, Bledsoe's been closer than people think defensively to Holiday, which I agree with. But when come playoff time, I think Bledsoe can really be inconsistent and struggle. And I think Drew Holiday's a perfect player to replace him. But I do think it's quite a lot to give up. I would say that the Pelicans have done really well. It's basically the same trade that the Pelicans got for AD. I know it's different picks and they're going to fall in different places, but it's nearly identical. I believe it's just the only difference is one pick swap. But in terms of new picks they're getting the same that the Lakers paid for AD. The difference here is AD was going to be a free agent the year after and clearly wanted to leave, whereas Holiday, they're kind of shopping him rather than him asking to leave. But for me, I think the Pelicans have done incredibly well to get the haul that they've got for someone like Drew Holiday, who we said in the last podcast, yes, he's an all-star, but that was 10 years ago. He's had a few injury woes, and like I said, he's not been on the picture as a top NBA player for a few years now. So I think it improves them, but I'm not sure they paid the right price. But when everybody knows that you're the Bucks and you're desperate to kind of improve your team and keep Giannis, which we'll talk about in a minute, I think that's why they got what they got. And about an hour and a half after this, mate, we learned they traded for another player. They traded for Bogdan Bogdanovic in a sign-and trade deal. We haven't heard the full agreement of the contract that he signed with the Kings to then get traded straight to the Bucks. But they traded him for Dante DiVincenzo, Ilyasova, and DJ Wilson. So the Kings lose a player who probably didn't want to stay with them, even though he was unrestricted. But they managed to get an asset in Dante DiVincenzo back, which I think is quite nice. But in terms of the Bucks, Bogdanovic does struggle sometimes with some shot creation if it's inside. He's not as good scorer as people would like to believe, but he's a very good shooter. I think it's a good trade for what they gave up. I like Dante DiVincenzo, but I don't think he fits the timeline for the Bucks. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, DiVincenzo is a little bit young for this team. Needs to be brought on a bit more, doesn't he? Somewhere else, like the Kings. Kings would be perfect for him, definitely. Ersan Ilyasova, you can. It's one of those players you sort of take or leave, isn't he? Like you can see how he can contribute to your team. Looking at him, like I think from most teams' point of view, but in reality, what does he bring to the table, especially at $7 million at the moment with 33? I'm really up on Bogdan Bogdanovic. it'd be interesting to see what he signs for, and see what salary he brings back to the Bucks. But yeah, I agree with you. He is a really good shooter, especially from outside. Struggles a bit when he tries to get inside that mid range, but they don't want players in there, do they? Clogging that lane. They've got enough players to fill that area. So again, another good fit for this Bucks team. I'm just a little bit worried now for them. You know, they've given up 2 point guards for one. They've given up 2 power forwards and a shooting guard for 2 shooting guards.
Yeah, because they did also get another player back from the Kings, Justin James.
Yeah, Justin James.
Yeah, throw-in rookie sort of guy.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see now. It's a great starting lineup, but where is their depth coming from? Who is going to sign with the Bucks now in free agency, drafts? Who else are they going to trade for? How are they going to fill out this roster? Who are they going to re-sign of the guys that have got contracts expiring? It's gonna the next couple of steps I'm more interested for in the Bucks now than I was initially for what trades they're going to make.
Yeah, well, the deals that they've got, the one to the Pelicans, for example, includes this year's pick. So they haven't got a first-round pick at all this year because of the trade they just made. So they can't add any depth from that point of view either. They've also given up their second round already for this year, so they haven't got any picks at all in the draft. So they won't be adding anyone unless they buy a pick, which they might do. Some people buy a pick for a couple of million in the second round.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can't add in that sense either. In terms of players on the roster, you'd have Chris Middleton, Giannis, Holiday, Bogdanovic. Then you would have Dragon Bender and Thanis Antetokounmpo. That's it. Brook Lopez has declined his option. He's going to be a free agent. We were speaking off air that we wondered if he could just re-sign with them for a couple of years. But you never know. If someone pays more, then he's gone, unfortunately. Oh, they have Justin James as well. So you're talking 8 players they've got on their roster. So yeah, definitely a lot of work to be done. But rumours across the NBA that they think that Giannis was already interested in signing a supermax with them, and since this news has come out, there's been rumours circling that Giannis is very keen to pick up his 5-year supermax before the season starts. So clearly he's a fan of these deals, and they were desperate to keep him. And I think maybe that'll be the untold story of really why they did this, to kind of make the moves and make Giannis happy and get him to sign that supermax now, and then they don't have to worry about him leaving, and they can just keep building the team for years with him in mind as the lead player on that team.
Yeah, and I think the moves they've made not only intrigue Giannis enough to make that signing for this season, but they're players you can build and go forward with. They are the starting blocks of them really pushing for this championship and making that run. So there's no wonder why A, they've made these moves, and B, no wonder why Giannis is looking likely to sign on for this supermax deal. So good on the Bucks there. Really, really pleased to see them making changes, positive changes as well.
Well, I think Bogdanovic will be a 3, 4, 5-year deal if we had to guess. We don't know the details. So that's a long-term asset to pair with Giannis. Middleton's already there for a number of years, who Giannis likes to play with, and they seem to be friends off the court. So that's 3 players you've got for a while, and Holiday's a 2 year. So that gives you at least this year with Holiday, and then you can flip him again for something else, or you can just keep him. So yeah, I like those moves. In terms of the other teams involved in the trade, then we've already mentioned the Kings. They've got a good couple of assets back, which they need. Bogdanovic wasn't going to want to stay there long term, so it's no loss. In terms of the Pelicans, they've now got 13 first-round picks in the next 6 years. They're only just behind the Thunder. So they're going to be picking alternately every year in the draft, it looks like. And they've got the 13th and 24th pick in this year's draft. So I wonder if they could be trying to package those together and go up a couple of spaces, maybe with the Suns, who we were talking about earlier, who might need a bit of depth themselves. So I'll just ask you, Ben, which teams won the trade? Let's start with the Drew Holiday trade. Who won the trade? Was it the Milwaukee Bucks or was it the New Orleans Pelicans?
I'm going to lean towards the Bucks on this one, just
I would
because
disagree with you.
I knew you'd disagree, and B, I think he's an upgrade compared to Bledsoe and Hill. I think he brings more to the table than either of them. It's what worries me is who is going to be the backup now, and when taking Bledsoe off the court, is it going to be a more substantial drop off than it was replacing Bledsoe for Hill? Because at times Hill was playing way better than Bledsoe anyway, so it wasn't an issue swapping them out. Whereas now I'd be a little bit more worried. I think the upside is better, but the potential downside is a hell of a lot bigger. But I'm taking the risk. I'm on the Bucks side for this. I'm all in. Going Bucks on that one.
I'm just going to disagree because that is an AD-like call for a player who's not Anthony Davis. Obviously, it's a lot more than Chris Paul got. It's a lot more than that we're going to talk about in a minute for players like Schroeder. It's a lot more than for someone like Robert Covington. And I think they're desperate because they want to keep Giannis. So if they re-sign Giannis, they probably won the trade because it kept them. But I would say that for me, the Pelicans won the trade because they got a player they didn't want anymore, and they got 3 first-round picks and pick swaps for him on a rebuilding team with a very good GM who you know well from his Cavs days. So for me, I think the Pelicans won the trade. Let's go on to the other one and who won that trade, and then we'll move on. So Pelicans or the Kings? I'll go first. I think the Pelicans won this trade. Even though Bogdanovic was going to leave, I think the Kings got DiVincenzo, who's a good player, but nothing great. They could have forced Bogdanovic to stay unrestricted and then traded him in a year's time for more. Whereas I think the Bucks really need someone like Bogdanovic. They need the shooting. He's a very good age profile for them as well, which helps when you sign someone like Holiday. So for me, I think the Bucks won that trade just because I really like Bogdanovic. I haven't seen the details. So we don't know if he's overpaid or not, but currently what we know, I think they won that trade. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. As it stands, Bucks have won that trade unless it's some sort of silly money, in which case Kings might have pulled a fast one on them.
It wouldn't shock you if it was silly money with how desperate they are seeming. I've seen a lot of memes from NBA media people being like, "Oh, you thought we were making it up that Giannis, that the Bucks were terrified Giannis was going to leave." Well, look how desperate they are, and for me, I completely agree. I think this does show that they were absolutely desperate to not lose him. Which I guess a team like that, you're going to be desperate to keep one of the best players in your franchise history.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of huge trades there. This is all in the same 4-hour window, so it was a crazy night. Let's move on to the other trade that happened similar time to the Chris Paul one. We knew about this probably a day in advance, it was rumoured, and then it will be completed after the draft for compensation reasons. So Dennis Schroeder has been traded to the LA Lakers. OKC get back Danny Green and the 28th pick in this year's draft. So yes, that is another first-round pick. That's part of the 16 we were talking about. My initial thoughts were they could have got more, if I'm honest. I think they could have got more, but like I said earlier, I think teams look at Thunder now and know what they're trying to do and know how many picks they've got and don't want to overpay for their players. Danny Green's a player I think they've got to move on again or just buy him out. And if they buy him out, he can end up back from the Lakers anyway.
Yeah, so probably for like $3 million or whatever.
Yeah, or maybe go back to the Spurs, something like that. I'm not sure, but he'll be another player they'll be trying to flip. And if they could flip him for a second-round pick, then God, they'll be absolutely loving it. Someone like the Hawks might want a Danny Green for a second-round pick. So with Danny Green and Ricky Rubio, more assets for the Thunder to trade. But yeah, like I said, they've turned Westbrook into 3 first-round picks because part of the deals. They've got the first-round pick for Schroeder with the 28th this year, who they'll use to maybe either trade up and get a better piece or just to pick someone at 28 and take a bit of a flyer because they've got so many picks now. They can just take risks on players in the first round. In terms of Lakers, for me, I think it's a great move. He basically replaces Rajon Rondo, who looks like he's going to leave. We're going to talk about Rondo a little bit later. Looks like he's going to leave. I still think they need a wing that can shoot desperately now, even more so that Green's left, because he was bad in the playoffs, but he's still a better shooter than most of their players, which says a lot with how he was shooting in the playoffs. So for me, I think it's a great move, great signing for them. They didn't give up much. I don't think they were going to get anybody with the 28th pick who could help as much as Schroeder's going to help them. I just think they need to sign a wing for that mid-level who can just shoot threes and defend. Even if it's at a worse rate than Green, just someone who can do that. But for me, good move. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this. I do really like this. I loved Danny Green as a player, and I know he struggled this season in particular, but you still wouldn't sort of come off him as a defender, would you? Because of the potential risk of him catching fire, even now, even if he's cold, and he's a really good defender. You can't fault that, even when he's not shooting well. His defense is really good. So it is a big loss in terms of that side of things. But I love what Dennis Schroeder is going to bring to this Lakers squad. I think him and Anthony Davis and LeBron are all going to work really well together. The 3-point guards kind of now, I think, it's a nice sort of rotation in him, Alex Caruso, and Quinn Cook, which I'd be fine with as a Laker. I agree. It's just that perimeter shooting now. Whether they, I don't know, like as much as we sort of bag on him, but Dion Waiters wants to stick around because when he is on form, if LeBron and Davis can keep him in line and keep him focused, he's a really good shooter and can create a shot. Or whether they can pick up some good free agent shooters that are looking at this team and saying, yeah, I can contribute to this and we can make another run and go back to back. So from a Lakers point of view, I think this is a really, really good trade. From OKC, I think you might be right. I think they probably could have got a little bit more for Schroeder. I think his stock's gone up this season in OKC compared to where he was before when he went from the Hawks to, where was he? Detroit?
I think he went straight from Hawks to OKC, didn't he?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But he was really bad on the Hawks.
He was a great backup point guard there. And then...
Oh, wasn't it Houston Rockets?
Oh, maybe. I can't remember.
It's part of the Westbrook trade, I think.
He was a great backup at the Hawks and then got pushed into sort of the starting role and was terrible, basically.
Yeah, too much usage.
Yeah. So
he'll probably be the starter for LA, though, right? Well, definitely.
Yeah, I'd have thought so, but equally, he's going to be one of the more of an off-ball point guard, isn't he? Quite a lot of the time with LeBron there. You would have thought.
Yeah, I think he'll stay on the court when LeBron's off the court. To do the ball handling when he's off, you'd think.
Yeah, and even at that point, he'll probably be sharing that with Caruso. So,
yeah, you're right. In terms of what you're saying earlier about the guard rotation, just to add in there, like we said, Rondo's left. Well, he's a free agent, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But rumours he's leaving. KCP didn't accept his option, so they did need to add a guard who can play on and off ball, which is something Schroeder can do, like we saw last year. Chris Paul was dominating the ball a lot. Shea Gilgeous had a lot of the ball as well, but they were on the court together with Schroeder all the time. So I think it proves that Schroeder can play on and off ball, which is crucial for a LeBron-led team.
Yeah.
So who won the trade?
I think the Lakers won this one. Like you said, there's always that potential that Danny Green gets bought out or flipped again or whatever, and he ends up coming back around anyway. So in which case, you haven't really lost anything.
No,
I doubt.
I agree.
I
would agree. I think he might be it. A lot of players don't like getting traded, so I don't think he will end up going back there. But there's a case to say he might get bought out. But I think it's clear they won the trade. I think they got Schroeder slightly on the cheap. But they also got a first-round pick. So yeah, I agree with you. They won the trade. And last little bit of notice on this: a Thunder beat writer from the States tweeted something out earlier, which I wanted to get your opinion on. He put, "I don't think it's coincidental that the Thunder completed 2 trades to acquire good quality wings the day before the draft. Look for OKC to be aggressive tomorrow night with Oubre, Green, and the 25 and 28 pick." So he seems to be thinking that there's teams lower in the draft that want wings, like everybody does in the NBA, and that the Thunder have now got 2 wings that can shoot and defend at good sizes, plus 2 late round picks, so they can look to move again tomorrow night. now I've read that, I just think that's clearly the strategy, like to move those two wings again tomorrow night. Don't you think that sounds like a great idea for the Thunder?
Yeah, sounds like an incredible idea. It sounds very on brand for what they've been building over the past couple of seasons. It's just who bites on that?
Warriors.
How?
I've Warriors. I think
Oh,
Kelly Oubre to the Warriors was mentioned before. Don't you think that would be a good pick?
wow.
Because
Yeah,
you could trade the second pick to OKC for Oubre. I'd probably send Danny Green somewhere else because I think the amount of money that they would earn together is too much for any team down there to pick up together.
yeah,
But they could get maybe Oubre and both those late picks, or maybe one of those late picks and then a future late pick, because we know that the Thunder have got enough picks to swap straight for the number 2. So they get a small forward in Kelly Oubre for a year. They'd have his bird right, so they could extend him next year, and then they'd get a later pick where they could add a big. And he's on 14 million, so that would fit with the Warriors trade exception. They could do that. They could do that deal. That would be very intriguing.
yeah. That sounds very likely, doesn't it?
I think the Hawks are another one they could trade for either Danny Green or Kelly Oubre.
I was going to
And give
say
up
I
that.
like Danny Green to the Hawks because
Yeah, me too.
Trae Young's not a good defender. So with Danny Green there, he spreads the floor a little bit. You don't have to worry about his shooting too much because you've got Trae Young shooting. But defensively, he's going to bolster that squad massively and bring a bit of a veteran presence. So that is a great move there as well.
I think Pistons or Wizards would be interested as well, if I'm honest. I think it would not shock me someone like the Pistons or Wizards giving up a 7 or 9 to get Kelly Oubre because of his age. I wouldn't be the Wizards actually, because he's already played for them. To go from like Detroit, and then they get the 7th pick, and then you give up Kelly Oubre and 2 late round picks, and then you can send Danny Green to the Hawks for 6. That has got me more excited for the draft than I care to tell people on the podcast. So very good. I think they're going to trade both those picks and both those players tomorrow night now. So if they don't, I'll be disappointed.
Well,
But let's move on to talk about a trade that doesn't involve OKC. Robert Covington, a player that I really like. I think you're quite high on him as well. He's
yep.
been traded to the Blazers. So he's gone from Houston to the Blazers. In return, the Houston Rockets get Trevor Ariza, a 16th pick this year, and a future protected first round pick. I haven't seen the protections. Apparently it's quite heavily protected, so probably a very late pick. And then it will probably drag on for a couple more years before it becomes unprotected. My initial thoughts are it's a great return for the Rockets, a team that's kind of in flux a little bit at the moment. But yeah, and I think the Blazers have added a great wing. Their starting 5, we were talking about it off air, could be Dame, CJ, Covington, Collins, Nurkic, and then you'd have Trent Jr. and Carmelo Anthony potentially off the bench. Whiteside's a free agent now. Rodney Hood has opted out today, so they're both gone. Yeah, they've got Anthony Simons as well, backup guard. So that's a good rotation, really. And they have got another player that I'm blanking on, whether it's Amino or Harkless. They've got another wing as well to come off the bench. For me, I think it's a very good return for the Rockets, but it's the perfect player for me that the Blazers needed. They need a defensive wing. And he can rebound like we saw on the small ball Rockets. But what are your thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, I agree. I think for defensive purposes alone, it's a really, really good signing for them because we said they're all offense, aren't they?
Yeah.
Even Nurkic, really, he's not a defensive center. He's more of an offensive center. So this is a great addition for them, especially with, I know Rodney Hood's coming off the back of that Achilles injury, but I'm sure he could have been a contributing player. So that'll be a loss for them because he was a massive piece of their team early in the season.
Well, he must think he's got a deal lined up somewhere because he's opted out of $5 million guaranteed money, just coming off an Achilles tear. So you'd think that somebody has promised him maybe a multi-year deal, because with that injury, if you're going to get a 2 or 3 year deal, even if it's for the same money, $5 million a year, if you get that for $3 million, you'd think that's a better deal. So yeah, he must be on a promise from someone because I was quite shocked to see him opt out. So I think Covington's
I was as well.
more important now.
Yeah, I wondered if that was the reason they sort of went for this, pulled the trigger on this. The other thing as well, Ariza's what, 35?
Yeah, he used to play for the Rockets as well, and they love him over there. He's friends with James Harden, so I wonder if that's
There's
another
maybe a
reason.
way
But
to try and keep Harden sweet as well. Whereas Covington's only 29,
yeah,
and their salaries basically match, so perfect for both of them, really. Ariza's going to go somewhere he likes and play with people that he likes, and I don't know, enjoy his last couple of seasons or however long more he's got left in the tank.
yeah, and it means the Houston Rockets have got the 16th pick in this year's draft, which is what we said earlier. It's a little bit of a sweet spot. Anywhere from 8 to 20 is a pretty nice place to be. You're going to get your hands on a good prospect, really. So I think
A
a team
centre,
like
perhaps, for Houston?
yeah, maybe if they want to go a slightly different way, slightly bigger with the new coach, I think that's a good pick to have. I think it just helps them rebuild a little bit whilst also not losing a wing, because we know they need wings for their system.
Yeah.
They need people just to stand in the corner almost and shoot. Even if they change the system, you still need wings that can defend and shoot. And Ariza can at least do that, but he does it slightly worse than Covington at a worse age, so you get that extra pick. So I think it's good for their depth. It probably weakens them in one way, but it is good for their depth, and you don't know who they're going to add with the 16th pick. They could add someone that ends up being a really good player for very cheap. So I like it for both people, but I'd still say the Blazers win the trade, because for me, the West is getting stronger, and the Suns adding to that now. The Mavs, very strong team that me and you both like for this season coming up with how Luka played last year. So I think that the Blazers needed to keep up and go up a notch, and I think Covington can do that for them.
Hands down, the Blazers won this, yeah.
I think it means Carmelo might sign for them, like more likely, because Covington can play 3 and 4, yes, but Ariza was getting to the point at his age where you'd want him more as a 4.
Yeah.
And I think that might open up a little bit more chance that Melo goes back and plays off the bench as that 4, but he doesn't have to switch to the 3 and guard the quick small forwards that someone like Covington could just step in and guard.
I think there's more chance of Melo signing now as well, because he's got a better defender with him to pair with him, so he doesn't necessarily have to chase people around. But also with Hood opting out, those minutes are still available for him, so he's going to get decent playing time again, like he did when Hood went out injured, and then Ariza opted out of the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what part of what he's looking for. I think he's kind of settled with coming off the bench in a team that he's happy in, as long as he's still getting a decent amount of minutes and can contribute to a team.
Yeah.
So I think you might be right that Melo is likely to sign back on there. And if potential other trade rumours are true with who might be going to New York instead, I don't know if he'd want to go and play with a player like that at this point in his career.
Yeah, I still want him to sign for the Knicks. I want him to retire at the Knicks, but he might want to play for 2 more years. So he could always play for the Blazers this year and go to the Knicks next year. But
yeah, he could sign like a 2-year deal and with a player option and do what he wants to do.
Knicks or Warriors, I'd still like to see him play with Steph, because I think he just gets so many open shots with them. But it's a very different role, a lot less mid-range shooting. But cool, let's move on from the trades a little bit then and talk confirmed trade and talk about the rumor mill. I only told you we're going to talk about one of these players, but I've got five players to talk about. The first one was because there was a little bit of a tweet earlier from a New York Knicks beat reporter about Mr. Russell Westbrook whilst we're talking all things Houston Rockets.
What a segue this is.
I know. Well, the rumours are that there's only 2 teams left in the Westbrook sweepstakes. Bill Simmons did report on his pod that he's hearing hardly anybody's interest in Westbrook, which we're not shocked with that contract.
Not at all.
And it seems to be down to the Hornets and Knicks. But there's very different stipulations. I think the Knicks don't want to give up assets, but they're not bothered about bringing back assets. So, for example, the Hornets might want like another first to come with them, or Daniel House, someone who's young to join. Whereas the Knicks apparently aren't bothered about getting anything. They don't want to have to give up whoever the assets they've told Houston they want to keep, whether it's picks or players. So apparently one team is kind of saying, oh, we'll take back more and we'll give up more of what you want. And the other team might be saying, oh, I'm happy to just take Westbrook, but I don't really want to give up more than X amount. So it kind of depends what the Rockets want. Does it shock you, Ben, that there's only 2 teams left in the sweepstakes, and it might be the 2 worst franchises in the Eastern Conference that need to make a bit of a... Well, they don't need to make a splash. I think the Knicks probably should just carry on doing what they're doing. I think it's quite clever to not spend loads of money and build the young players up. But maybe the fans think they need to make a splash?
Yeah, it's more of a headline, isn't it, than anything else? And what a triangle this is. If you built anything on this triangle, it would collapse instantly. Like, one of the biggest franchises in the world that's had a history in the past 10 years of being awful and making terrible decisions wants to get Russell Westbrook. The other franchise, owned by one of the best players in the world, known for in the past 10 years making terrible basketball decisions and not looking after their players very well, and letting them walk and signing them to terrible deals, and they go downhill massively, also wants to sign Russell Westbrook. A, what does that say about Russell Westbrook? And B, what are these franchises thinking? Just stick to like, come up with a plan to start with, which I think, like you said, the Knicks have started to do now. They've got in some fresh blood in the front office, and B, stick to the plan. I think it's stupid for the Knicks to really. I think they're being clever what they're saying. Look, we'll have him off you if you don't want him, but we won't give you much for it because we're doing you a favour.
Yeah,
Whereas
but
it
we're
seems
not. Yeah,
more
but we
like
don't. Yeah, go.
Charlotte are like, yeah, we genuinely want him, and we will give up this, but only if you sort of chuck this into the deal, just in case this whole Westbrook thing doesn't quite work out. Just because Michael Jordan's friends with him.
I'm a bit torn about this because I found Westbrook fun, and rooting against him is difficult in the early years before he started jacking up threes, because when he used to be on and he was driving to the basket, and he was actually a better 3-point shooter back in the day, he was horrendous to play. He was horrendous to play against because you'd just be like, oh my God, if he gets going, how do you defend him? He's almost like a smaller Giannis in terms of how much he used to dunk the ball and drive into the paint. But as time's gone on, he's gone to the Rockets especially, who obviously we have issues with. It's kind of made me like him less. And now I follow basketball analytics even more. It's such clear, and the fact he's such a worse shooter now, that he's not a good modern day player. But part of me just thinks that if I'm one of these teams, there are reasons to want him. But it just makes no sense for team building at all.
He's going to get headlines and bums in seats. And if he drives to the hole every single time and gets rebounds and does those things that he's good at, fine, sign him for your team.
Well, he'll score 30 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds for either of these team and be an Eastern Conference All-Star next year if he signed for them, for sure, because his numbers would be too good because he'd have the ball the whole game.
Yeah, exactly, because there's nobody else on either of those rosters that can do anything.
Plays that way, yeah. Well, it's a nice segue into the other rumour about James Harden, but before we talk about James, I would say that if they choose to trade James Harden, I think Russell Westbrook should go in and just say, look, I'll stay here, because I think they'll have a lot of role players to play with him. And I think whichever one gets traded first, more likely if Harden gets traded first, I think Westbrook should just stay in Houston because he can do all those things but have a slightly better chance at getting into the playoffs, because even though the West is loaded, you'd get loads of players back for Harden, and they've already got a few really nice players. I know PJ Tucker might want to leave, which is another first-round pick they could probably get. But if I'm Westbrook, I'd probably stay in Houston if they move Harden. But otherwise, I'd be just clamoring to go for the Knicks, just because we know he loves New York. He loves the fashion scene. He's obviously big on celebrity world, and he'd make a lot of money in New York. But yeah, it doesn't shock either of us that they're the only two teams interested.
Yeah, I think you're right. Off the court, the move to New York makes so much sense for Westbrook.
Yeah, it does.
On
he's 32 as well, so
yeah, on the court, I 100% think if he's going anywhere, he's going to Charlotte, because Houston get more from it, and Michael Jordan loves Westbrook, and he's a Jordan Brand player, and Charlotte need to be relevant for 2 months before he injures himself or whatever. I've read something recently which was quite interesting when you think about it. Over the past couple of years, James Harden has played with Dwight Howard coming out of his prime, but still an all-star big, and he wanted to leave. He
has a horrible attitude, to be fair.
Played with Chris Paul and Carmelo, who both wanted to leave. He's then played with Westbrook, one of his closest friends, who now wants to leave. What is
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah, well, I agree, but I think there's more to it. The system is very specific there. And I did hear Melo talk on a podcast that he was like buzzing with the Rockets, and randomly they just changed their mind on him, and they just wanted to get rid of him. In terms of Dwight Howard, yeah, he's a bit of a mystery. Chris Paul and James Harden are very opposite characters. I think that was a disaster. But yeah, Westbrook, I don't know. I'm just not sure. He seems to, his words were obviously he wanted to get traded because he doesn't like the way the franchise is going. And apparently they're still friends. And if James Harden's thinking about getting traded, it could also be true that it's more of a franchise issue, not a James issue. But I understand how it might not be fun for players to play with Harden, but whether that's all Harden and not some of the system that the coach kind of designs, I'm not quite sure.
I feel like Houston are gearing up to go into rebuild mode.
Well, yeah, that leads us perfectly onto this rumor, the James Harden rumor. We've got this one, which is a big topic, and then I've got three other players I want to ask you which team. There's two rumors for each player, and I want to see which team you think. But let's start with James Harden first. So there's rumors that he wants to go to the Brooklyn Nets. Apparently, he did want to stay, and then when the Nets rumors heated up, he soured a little bit. And Woj reported last night that he's turned down a $50 million a year extension. There was different reports. One said 2 years, one said 3 years. So whatever it is, 2 or 3 year deal, but it's $50 million per year, biggest contract in basketball history. He's turned that extension down, and apparently the only team he wants to go to are the Nets or the 76ers, but the Nets seem to be his preferred destination. My first question is Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden together, WTF question mark on my notes. Yeah, that's a lot of ice.
Who's going to dribble the ball the most?
Well, it definitely wouldn't be KD because he didn't dribble the most in Golden State, so he's almost taken a back seat again there.
Yeah.
But he's very close with, well, he likes Kyrie. They wanted to pair up together, so they're obviously friends. And he's very, very close to James Harden. There are certain rumors that Kyrie is not a fan of this idea, and that would not shock me at all. Harden is owed $41.5 million this year, and then there's 2 years after. So whoever trades for him is getting Harden for 3 years, which I think the amount you'd have to give up for Harden, even if he costs that much, I think you're glad that he's on a 3 year deal because you don't want to give up all your stuff just for a 1 year flyer. I think the way Harden plays, and he's so offensively, like so high scoring, he's so focused on offense. I think that you basically want to build, like whatever team it is, it's like, right, we're getting Harden, we're going all in for 3 years. And after that, we know we're going to have no picks, no players, but let's try and win a title. And Kyrie's deal is 3 years. I think KD's is 3 years with an option. KD's is 3 years, Kyrie's 3 with an option. So they'd basically all be here for 3 full seasons, guaranteed, unless they get traded again. We'll talk about how the trade would work in a minute because I want to read it out to you because it's hilarious. But what are your thoughts on those three just even being on a team together?
That's disgusting. I actively hate it. Just
they'd win every game, wouldn't they?
Like, it'd be interesting to see, but I don't know. I'm just not into it. I can't see it working at all.
Well, you know that Kevin Durant's my favourite or second favourite. It's very hard with Luka, but I think Kevin Durant's the best player I've ever seen live. I've never seen Michael Jordan live. And for him, yes, when it comes to playoff time, he'd probably still dominate because that's Kevin Durant. That's what he did at Golden State. But there'll be a lot of games where me as a Durant fan, I'd be watching thinking, God, this is just awful because he wouldn't touch the ball for minutes on end at times. Or if they did, they'd have to design an incredible system, which would be really cool to see. But you'll see these three players pass more than ever if they try to get everyone involved. And it would be very strange.
Kevin Durant would become some sort of weird sort of stretch four and just stand in the corners and wait for the ball to shoot.
And defend.
Which, for somebody of his caliber, for that to be your role on this team is
disappointing.
It's not good. And I know Houston have asked, haven't they? Houston have asked. They said if we give you Harden, we want Durant or Irving back. Which again, neither really makes sense. The one you'd give up is Kyrie.
You're not. Yeah, exactly. If you had to pick only two players to play together on that list, it wouldn't be Harden and Kyrie. It'd be KD and one of the other two. You'd be sending Kyrie back, wouldn't you? But I don't think that
But that's
I think
almost
that's a
like
great
for like.
trade.
So what's the point?
Well, it's a great trade if Harden wants to leave and then, but Kyrie's not going to be happy with that. So, so you're just going to get another player that wants to leave.
Yeah.
Like I said, if I go through the trade with you quickly, the only way it works financially is if the Nets trade Jared Allen, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, DeAndre Jordan, and Torian Prince, or Gary Temple, but they probably trade Prince, but Temple or Prince, one of the two. So that is 5 players. Plus, if you look at the fact Drew Holiday just got 3 first-round picks, maybe 4 first-round picks, maybe it would be 2 or 3 just because you're getting all those players as well. But there's absolutely no way after they just got a first round for Covington, they're not going to get 3 for James Harden. So let's say 3 first-round picks. That's 3 first-round picks. Allen, Dinwiddie, LeVert, who are really good players, Jordan and Temple or Prince to match the contracts. That is an absolute massive massive trade, sorry. And with Joe Harris as a free agent, I don't know how it works. They've got his bird right, so I assume they could just sign him for whatever and go into the tax. But you basically have to sign Harris at that point just to have some shooting and someone who doesn't play for whatever money he wants. And then your only options after that would be what the Lakers did, just sign people on minimum deals. But yeah, what a crazy trade. Is that worth it for the Rockets if you got 2 or 3 first-round picks and then all those players? Because there's no way that it works without those players because you can't match the salaries.
I think it works from a Rockets point of view. I just can't see this working for Brooklyn at all. You're giving up a team that took its 3rd stringers into the playoffs and won a game against the 1 seed. So the depth on your team behind your All-Stars is actually fairly good.
Yeah, well, your team would basically be Kyrie at the 1, James at the 2, Harris at the 3, Durant at the 4, and then whatever center you pluck out of nowhere. I think they'd be one of the most insane teams ever, but I'd be interested to see it. But God, I don't know. I don't know if I was an Eastern Conference team, which I'm not a fan of. I don't know if I would be absolutely buzzing that they're going to have this team that sounds like it might implode, or absolutely terrified that you've got 3 of the arguably top 10, if not top 15 players in the world. You may have 2 of the top 6 players in the world, all on the team together. I just don't know if anyone could outscore them if it worked.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? Like, it's like you're playing NBA and you're just you're playing 2K and just trading for whatever the best thing you can get, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like 2K.
And they'd still sim and lose, like, get the 8th seed and lose or whatever. But I can't see this one going well.
Do you think it will happen, though, is my question.
No.
And do you think he gets traded to the 76ers then? Or not?
I think
he
it's
just stays
more
for a year?
likely.
The issue with the 76ers, obviously, the owner then lets his GM and best player go to the same team. And if Philadelphia then won something after all the years they tried in Houston, it would look really bad on the owner. But yeah, it doesn't surprise you there. There's got Daryl Morey at the 76ers, and then you've got D'Antoni at the Nets. So James Harden clearly did like how things, or at least like those as people.
Of course he did. It was built round him, wasn't it? Everything, the coach, and the GM.
He said before, though, he hates playing hero ball and he wants to be in a rocket system where they pass the ball and stuff. But everyone's just built it around him. And since he's left the Thunder, and when he played for the Thunder, he was an off-ball wing. So I don't know. I think he could surprise a few people if he went somewhere else, but I'm not sure if going with Kyrie. It's more Kyrie than KD, if I'm honest, is the issue. I think if the Nets just had Kevin Durant, or if the Knicks managed to get Kevin Durant last year and then Harden went to join him, for me, they'd probably win it all because that fits perfectly together. When you add Mr. Kyrie in the mix, it changes things a little bit. But I think he gets traded, and I think he gets traded to the Nets. I just think it's going to happen because I just can't see them letting Philadelphia win with Daryl Morey and Harden. The only way it would work, I think, is if Ben Simmons was offered in a trade. Because then if you're the Houston Rockets, you have to take that because whatever the Nets can offer, even if it's more chances with like loads of picks, the Philadelphia 76ers can offer loads of future picks anyway, even if they're further down the line. And none of the players that they offer, Levert or Allen or anyone's going to get anywhere near to the level that Ben Simmons can get to. So I think if Ben Simmons is on the table, which we don't know if he is, they might be trying to do a bloody Al Horford, Tobias Harris sort of deal, which if you're the Rockets, you just say no to. But I think he goes to the Nets, and you think he stays in Houston?
I don't know. I quite like that Ben Simmons coming back because they've already got all that shooting on the Houston Rockets already.
He
Put
just
that around,
places and
put that around Simmons. That could work quite nicely. Which is a shame as well, because if I'm on the 76ers, I might rather get rid of, I don't know. I want to say I might rather get rid of Embiid, because for me, he's been a lot of empty promises.
Just the issue with Ben Simmons liking to carry the ball, isn't it? With it's almost like Westbrook Harden again, but Ben Simmons is a better passer, and he can't shoot either, but he just doesn't shoot. Whereas Westbrook can't shoot and does shoot a few times.
Yeah.
Not saying that he's not. He's obviously better than Westbrook, but in terms of style of play, I wonder if it will look a little bit similar.
And just because of who Embiid is, the 76ers are going to keep hold of him because he's a personality, and the people of Philly love him rather than like Ben Simmons is a bit more an introvert, although I think he's
a better player,
offers more to your team than Embiid might.
So I'm pushing you on a final answer. Does he stay, or does he get traded to the 76ers then, if you don't think it's the Nets?
Yeah, let's do it. He's going to the 76ers. Ben Simmons is going to Houston.
Oh, nice. I would find it hilarious. If the Nets traded him for Kyrie and just left Kyrie absolutely gutted. Like I don't want anyone to be upset because I think Kyrie would struggle with that mentally. But I just think that would be a very typical Netsy sort of move after they steal him away from the Knicks and then they trade him without playing a game. Well, playing more than 20 games. But yeah, so there's three other players I want to ask you about. There's a couple of rumours on who they might go to. Bit of a quick fire one. So let's start with Rondo. He's opted out, like we spoke about earlier. The rumours are the Hawks are going to offer him quite a lot of money because they've got a lot of cap space, which we talked about before. And they're going to offer him the most money. But he, however, is holding out for the Clippers. And he wants to take a mid-level if they can afford it. So it'll be a lot less money than what the Hawks pay, maybe half. But he wants to play for the Clippers. He wants to have that chance to play with Kawhi and that lot. Where do you think he goes? And if he wants to go to the Clippers, do you think that's a nice fit for them?
It's a great fit for the Clippers. They need a sort of a leader, a good point guard, one that is fiery, but in the right places.
And cheaper as well, I guess.
And cheaper, yeah. So it could be a really nice fit for them. I do quite like him on the Hawks as well, coming off the bench, that defensive point guard. He can all play, again, like we said with Danny Green, he could play alongside Trae Young, especially the way he's been handling the ball and shooting, and Trae Young sort of become a bit more off ball. Either works. An outside ringer for me, potentially, if they can find the money for him. He could fit that Bucks roster quite nicely as the backup point guard there. Just creating things for all the other players, running the second unit. Pressure off Giannis again. But it's not likely going to happen. I don't think he's going to go to that kind of team in that kind of market coming from LA. So I think I just feel like it's a bit of a rubbish move going from a championship winning Lakers team to then go to the Clippers. But I don't think Rondo really cares. So I think
I don't know if it's a rubbish move though, because arguably everyone would say that the Clippers are the better team if they sort the attitude out. And obviously Harrell's going to leave, isn't he? This summer, and you sent me a post that Lou Williams might get traded to the Mavs, which I don't know I would like. So yeah, I think he goes to the Clippers, but I agree.
Yeah, I do as well.
The Hawks might be a nicer fit long term, but he's a bit of a ring chaser, isn't he? So if you're not going to go to the Bucks or Lakers or Warriors, your best chance is probably the Clippers, I'd say.
What does make me laugh is how he and the other Celtics reacted to Ray Allen leaving and going to the Heat, and now look at him, just like you said,
Well, I
chasing
don't actually
rings.
like. I know you like him. I don't even like him as a player. So if I was the Mavs, for example, I'd be like, well, they've already had him, but I'd be like, yeah, I do not want Rondo. So if I'm a Clippers fan, I don't want Rondo. But he played well in the playoffs. But for me, I don't know if that's really him. Long term, like I just think it was a bit of a good spot, but I might be wrong. But I think he'll go to the Clippers. If he's already come out and said he wants to take less money to go to them over the Hawks, I think it sounds like his mind's made up if the Clippers can kind of do the deal.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one then. Buddy Hield. This is a very loose rumours. Apparently, the 76ers, they've always been interested. Obviously, it would involve Al Horford going the other way. Whether that happens or not, no idea. And then Buddy Hield to Denver is another rumour that came out this afternoon. Do you think he gets traded to Denver or the 76ers? And which one would be the better fit? In fact, to ask you for a quick fire answer.
Off the bat, 76ers is the better fit. However, if Harden ends up there, he's gonna definitely go to Denver.
Yeah, probably. He's a good shooter, to be fair. I think he fits both teams perfectly what they want in terms of that shooting they need. For me, it's just all about the Kings. There's absolutely no way I'll be taking Al Horford back unless they offer me loads of picks. And if I'm 76ers, I would rather just be phoning Houston now and offering loads of picks for Harden rather than giving loads of picks just to get rid of Horford.
Yeah,
if I'm honest, you'd probably have to give Horford up anyway, wouldn't you?
What are Denver offering in return? That's the other side of it.
Depends what young player. They've got a lot more young players, haven't they? I think Porter Jr. might be off the cards, but they might be offering. I don't know. I've forgotten his name now. Who's the other guard that's a very good? Gary Harris.
Yeah,
someone like that is obviously the contract. The difference is it's not this crushing Al Horford contract. Like you're not going to get loads for Buddy Hield because he wants to leave. You're going to get a couple of picks in that, but you hopefully won't get someone who hates someone who you hate the contract of.
Maybe a Will Barton could go back instead.
Yeah, but I do think that he'll go to 76ers just because that's been a rumor for ages. But I think Denver would be a better fit for him if they can find something that the Kings like.
Yeah.
Two more now that both involve the Heat. Wesley Matthews, who played for the Bucks last year, apparently the Bucks want to sign him again. He thinks he can get more money elsewhere, but if free agency goes on and he hasn't, then maybe he'll want to go back to the Bucks and join that team. The other team is the Miami Heat, like I said. They're rumoured to be after a couple of vets, including Wesley Matthews. Do you think Wesley Matthews joins the Heat or Bucks? But more importantly, which one thinks the better fit for him?
I think the Heat could make him work really, really well. But I feel like the Heat, the way that they are managed and playing at the moment, they could make anyone work really well in that roster and that unit.
Yeah, you think he'd get more money at the Heat as well in the short term, just because of the fact we just said that the Bucks have made all those trades and they've got to pay Giannis next year. So I guess maybe he'd get a little bit more money at the Heat, even if it was just for one season.
Yeah, potentially.
Especially if Giannis isn't like the Heat were very, very, very strong on Giannis. That's also been the rumor. So if he does sign a new deal, that is kind of their first choice gone already. So maybe they don't need to worry about their salary cap as much for next year if they want to wait another year if there's a different free agent. Depends who the target is. If it's Bradley Beal, that's another year. So maybe you could pay Wesley Matthews for 2 years and wait for Beal on the third year, maybe.
The other thing, I guess, that was probably going to pay into their thought a lot more than what we think is Miami or Milwaukee as a place to live.
Yeah, we just go Miami.
Yeah.
I think if you sign Dragic, Crowder, and Wesley Matthews, I think that's a really nice experience core. Yeah, to add to a team that, if I'm honest, if Harden does go to the East, that you're kind of looking around being like, oh, we are slightly behind everyone else. We need to add more depth. Like what made them win last year was having players that could shoot, score, defend in all different positions rather than just having like 2 stars. It was kind of everyone did whatever they could.
Yeah,
and I think Matthews. Yeah, I think Matthews fits that. Obviously, if you're a Heat fan, you would 100% rather them trade for Bradley Beal or maybe Oladipo if you like him enough. But yeah, I think he will probably end up at the Heat. If I was honest with Wesley Matthews.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. If I was him and I had the choice of similar, if not more money and going to Miami, I think that's probably where I'd go.
I agree. And the last one involves the Heat as well, and my Mavs. Mr. Danilo Gallinari. Loads of teams interested, like we said, there would be. Apparently, the Mavs and the Heat seem to be at the top of that list. In terms of money, I think both would be the mid-level rather than a multiple-year deal. I'm not sure, but I personally can really see him going to the Mavs with the whole Euro connection. I know Dallas is obviously good for state tax, and I know Miami's a great place to live, but playing with Luka Doncic and Porzingis, I wonder in that system if Gallinari could be the perfect player. So for me, I'd be excited for the Mavs to sign him. And I think he may end up there, but whether that's his bias or not. Where do you think he ends up? And I think they're both perfect fits for him, but where do you think he would be best suited?
Yeah, I think the Mavericks need him more than the Heat do.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he would get more game time and more shots and more ball than he would if he went to the Heat, because obviously he's got Jimmy Butler, who's going to be in front of him the whole time. Whereas the Mavericks, who's your starting small forward at the moment?
Depends what they play, really. So you'd be looking at Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe would play there, or Tim Hardaway Jr.
And you'd probably put Gallinari in over those two nine times out of 10.
Yeah, if you keep Hardaway, you probably go Luka and Hardaway in the backcourt if Brunson's not fit, and you probably go Gallinari, Porzingis, and Powell, or Finney-Smith maybe, Porzingis and Gallinari. Three
because Gallinari you could play as a stretch four if needs be as well.
Yeah, you can basically play the shooting with him and Porzingis at 5 and 4. I don't know how good your defense would be. You'd have some good shot blocking. Porzingis is a really good shot blocker, but he's just rubbish at pick and roll defense. Gallinari tries really hard, which most bigs don't. But he's just not naturally a great defender. But yeah, the shooting with Luka, if you had those two, and Tim Hardaway Jr. would be insane. But you'd have to have another player who just defends purely.
Yeah. No, I like him on the Mavs. Let's send him there.
Nice. Let's send him there. Cool. And that is the end to our first trade season pod. So me and CJ, who we heard from before, will be recapping the draft in a couple of days' time. Then me and Ben will be getting together at the weekend, I think, to talk about the free agents. Is that the plan, Ben?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, do some free agent news. That's Friday night, the free agent window opens. So we're going to wait a couple of days, see how crazy it gets. But if in the first 24 hours they've all gone, we're going to have to jump on again a day earlier and do another pod. But yeah, thanks for joining me, mate. Hope you managed to get some sleep with all these rumours. There's more rumours coming out every minute. And I will speak to you soon.
Yeah, man, I'm going to be trying to sleep thinking about all these potential moves. Who knows?
Enjoy the draft, everyone. Speak to you soon.
Bye.